There is just 1 minute remaining in the training period. Coaches, team managers, the warm-up period is now over. We ask our athletes to please step away from the diving boards. No more training. Thank you, athletes. Please step down off the platforms. We're ready to begin the girls A 1 meter finals. The girls B 1 meter finals. Coaches, thank you. Practice is now over. Please have your athletes step away from the diving boards. Practice is over. Could have our athlete from Mexico please report to the marshalling area. Girls B 1 meter. Team Mexico, please report to the marshalling area.
Tourisme Montréal is delighted to welcome you to the 2022 FINA World Junior Diving Championships. Visit mtl.org to get the inside scoop on everything happening in the city and to discover the best of Montreal. Tourisme Montréal est ravi de vous accueillir au Championnat du monde junior de plongeon de la FINA 2022. Visitez mtl.org pour savoir tout ce qui se passe à Montréal et découvrir ce que la ville a de meilleur à offrir. Nous reconnaissons que nous sommes sur un territoire autochtone millénaire, lieu de rencontre et de diplomatie entre les peuples, ainsi que du traité de la Grande Paix. Nous remercions la nation Kanien'kehá:ka de son hospitalité en territoire non cédé.
Diving fans, please welcome your finalists in the girls B 1 meter championship event.
Veuillez accueillir les athlètes qui participeront à la compétition.
Representing Germany,
Représentant l'Allemagne,
Vanessa Ronis. Representing Italy,
représentant l'Italie,
Georgia DeSantis. Representing Mexico,
représentant le Mexique,
Genesis Ramirez Jordan. Representing United States of America,
représentant les États-Unis d'Amérique,
Isabel Bailey. Representing Germany,
Représentant l'Allemagne,
Julina Schnabel. Representing Canada,
représentant le Canada,
Presley Deck. Representing Colombia,
représentant la Colombie,
Gabriela Ruzinski. Representing Sweden,
représentant la Suède,
Signe Stahl. Representing Australia,
représentant l'Australie,
Lucy Dovison. Representing Australia,
représentant l'Australie,
Paige Gillum. Representing Canada,
représentant le Canada,
Alexa Fung. Representing United States of America,
représentant les États-Unis d'Amérique,
Molly Gray. Diving fans, your girls B 1 meter championship finalists. Good luck. Let's go up in our crowd and meet our MC, Mr. Chris. What do you got going up there, buddy?
Bless my heart, bless my soul. Didn't think I'd make it to 22 years old. There must be someone up above. So you come on, Brittany. You got to come on now. You got to hold.
Hello and welcome back to day 6 of the FINA Junior World Championships here in Montreal. Starting off our finals today is the girls B 1 meter group. Joining me, Igor Kopecki. Hello.
Hi, Courtney. Thanks. Great to be back once again.
We are down to 12 athletes in the final, competing 3 rounds of dives. Only their optional dives going into this final with their prelim scores, and only a 12-point difference between first and 12th going into this final. So anybody has a chance, really.
Especially when you just have 3 dives. One little mistake can cost you a lot in the rankings, in the placings. And we saw that earlier. The German who qualified, who had 4th best compulsories, nearly fell off the board. She's starting off, just snuck into the final. I talked to her coach, and she said, yeah, the others gave us an opportunity, and we took it. So this was the dive that she actually balked on, which is when you start your arm swing and then kind of stop before you're about to go. She caught her balance, didn't fall off the board, did a good dive, but lost 2 points from each judge.
Redeeming herself.
No hesitation this time, so she'll definitely move up from her placing, qualifying 12th for the final, but sitting in 4th with the points that carry through.
And that was Vanessa from Team Germany. Team Germany, Team USA, Team Canada, and Team Australia all have 2 athletes in the final. So taking up 8 of those spots. And then Italy, Mexico, Colombia, and Sweden.
With the remaining spots. And when you have 2 in the finals, that shows a bit of the depth of the program and that they competed well. Strong programs, United States, Germany, of course, historically very strong, and Canada, home country. We've had 2 divers in a lot of the finals here, although this is the first final of the girls' B events that we've had both of our entrants make the final. So saving their best for last as a team effort. Very nice to see. On the board now, waiting for her first dive. As we get things sorted is Georgia De Sanctis from Italy. Also a finalist in the 3-meter event. We're just sorting things out. Right now, the judges are holding up scorecards, which means that there seems to be a technical issue with the iPads they were using to enter their scores earlier. This means our results won't be quite as spontaneous, as the scoring table will have to enter it manually as the announcer announces the scores. Whereas when it's iPad, it just goes instantaneous. Helps us here in the booth because then we get access immediately. We can give that to you even maybe before it appears on the screen. Now we're going to be just with everyone else as we see it all come together. A lot of girls starting with inward 1.5 pike. Georgia follows Vanessa with the same dive.
And when the athletes do the same dive throughout the event, that is when we really see cat and mouse, because they all have the same DD fighting for the highest scores from the judges. A really great start from Georgia with the inward 1.5 pike. Really no issues with that dive.
Yeah, even maybe a more precision on the entry than Vanessa did. These dives are going to be all relatively simple to make. There's no exceedingly challenging dives here. The trick is making them look beautiful, like Georgia just did, and getting that verticalness on the entry is going to differentiate the placings here. A few 8s on that dive. Her coach with a little pinch on the cheek. Not sure how much they enjoy that. Getting into the B age groups. I still do that with my son. He can't fight back. He's only 3 months.
Maybe he'll learn to love it.
Yes, it's done in love.
It's done in love.
From Mexico. Genesis. Not doing an inward. She's going for this will be sort of the harder dives we've seen. One of the harder dives we'll see in this event. Forward 2.5 pike. Needing a good hurdle, landing on the end of the board with good timing. We've talked about that in some of the other events. Now they only have to do 3 dives in this. So they're going to choose their best groups and best dives. Good hurdle, maybe a little sucked into the board. Couldn't quite see from this angle, but it was a little close. And when you're coming out right at the board, those feet can be close to the board. She flexes her feet a little bit to avoid it. Wasn't actually close enough to hit the board, seeing on the replay, but only scores a 5.5, 6. Now we do have the benefit, line of sight. We can see the judges putting up their scores. But Genesis qualified 10th for the final. You're going to want to do dives for 7s or better if you want to move up in the standings. Her coach and her discussing what didn't quite go as well as they wanted. in the background from the United States, Isabel. Now she dives with Omar Ojeda, a Mexican coach who went to college in the United States. Now has had some international divers under his care. Olympic finalist Rafael Quintero. And now Isabel, training really well, looked a little bit nervous in the prelims. They're happy she made it in the finals and has a chance to show off her dives a little bit more. This is a little more challenging of the dives we'll see. Back 1.5 twists.
Isabel not making this dive look challenging at all.
Makes it easily a little bit, could be a little bit higher, more vertical in the takeoff to have a little more control at the end. You can see it slip just a little bit past vertical. A low of 4, one judge really didn't like it, but basically 5s and 6s from the judges on that. There's Omar asking her to jump more straight up the next time she does that dive. A little bit of a touch base before you move on to the next dive. Talk about what went wrong, what went right. Different athletes, I think, have different enjoyment of that component. If it went well, it's nice to celebrate the greatness, but you always want to be ready to then put it behind you, whether it was good or bad, and get ready for your next round dive. Back to Germany. Julina Schnabel.
A very nice dive.
Following her teammates and Georgia's footsteps on inward 1.5 first. Great jump, nice height, and then follows it up with precision on this vertical entry. Look at that toe point. Beautiful dive. Great start from Julina.
And like we mentioned, we're not going to see a ton of big dives in this event. The B girls are a little bit younger, 14, 15 years old. But when we see dives like Julina just did, we know that pretty quickly she's going to start amping up her dives on the 1 meter, on the 3 meter, showing us those bigger dives.
And now the first of the two Canadians, Presley. She's going to follow this up also with her inward 1.5 pike. Now again, you were mentioning when the divers go back to back on the same dives, they get to compare and contrast. Presley with outstanding entries. We're looking for her to jump a little higher than usual so that she can show off some of her power and quickness in the height. Excellent start for Presley. Very high, very nice entry. From our angle, we're right behind her, so we can see her go just a little bit sideways. And you can see the splash just tip a little bit sideways. The little splash that there was on that. Solid start.
I also feel like watching it in slow-mo, the water comes up and drops a bit slower, so it looks bigger than it really was.
It's interesting, and this is an encouragement to always come and watch diving live. Diving looks better live. When you watch it on TV, as a coach, I always see the divers look at their dives and go, oh no, the entry was bad or this was off. But had you watched it live, you would have seen that it was actually better than it looks like on the TV. It always seems like that. From Bogota, Colombia, Gabriela.
So not a really powerful big jump off the 1 meter, but a very, very petite girl, very young. It's hard to make sure you're working with the board, especially there's so much power in the board. You really have to use your legs. This is a big dive. She's trying to focus on the somersault. Still receiving 6s, which is really not a bad score in this event.
High degree of difficulty. The forward 2.5 pike. In this event, 2.6 is the highest we'll see. She does rush a little bit. She is a powerful girl for her size, being able to do the hard dives with ease. Just a little bit rushed on that. Now she was showing some of the other divers how she competed just last week at another competition, and her 1 meter dives were spectacular. So not quite up to her level from the week before, but certainly the potential to do some great things. From Sweden, Signe, back 1.5 pike. So that's the first one we've seen start with a blind, so-called blind entry dive, where when you come out, you do not see the water. You have to look back afterwards, looking where you've been, not where you're going, as opposed to forward dives.
Dropping it just slightly short. This can occur when you come out of your dive and you don't press your hands against your thighs and keep them really close when you reach back. You can see she kind of threw her arms out into the open, just making that dive drop a little short.
Still, and then also the interesting strategy in which dives you're going to go with. Theoretically, you could do a forward, an inward, and a twist dive and never have to look backwards on those. If you're confident on your backs and reverses, you can throw those in. Another forward 2.5. Different than Gabriella's. This is much higher, but then unable to control vertical on the entry, just rolling over a little bit. For Australia's Lucy Dovison.
Still overall a really nice dive, just needing to get that control on the bottom, and that comes with time.
She grabs 1.7, mainly 6.5s. Steady dive. Lucy, unfortunately, fighting to come back after compulsories that had her 12th coming into the final with her total. Now her teammate, Paige, with a back 1.5 somersault pike.
Well, that's a nice way to start this final.
Great execution, yeah. You need to have great balance on a back 1.5 if you want to go straight in. She has great balance, great takeoff, beautiful legs and toes on this finish. Showing that off as she goes in and on the board closest to the judges. Some of the divers like to go, or don't like to be close to the judges. They're afraid of what the judges might see. Confidence in being there. Second place after the preliminaries, had the strongest compulsories of the event. So she's actually technically leading coming into this dive, and Alexa has a very powerful takeoff. So we'll see her on her inward 1.5 pike first dive.
Beautiful.
Excellently done. Right up there with all the best inward 1.5s that we've seen so far in this event. She will hang on to her lead with that dive. Right up high, great pike position. The close board hides her entry from that camera angle. But great start from Alexa. She dives with Jose Guerra, recently moved to Toronto, previously with Gilles. Coaches move from time to time here and there. One from Toronto to Calgary, one from Cuba to Toronto.
Yeah.
We've seen coaches go from Great Britain to Australia.
Quite a bit.
And all around. And most countries have at least one Chinese coach working in their system.
It's good to have a worldly federation. So Molly, who won the prelim, starting with her inward 1.5 somersault in the pike position.
Also very good, very close, very similar. Essentially, the inward 1.5s we've seen are all sort of a tie. So your compulsory scores, it's sort of over the dive, that just a little bit, being consistent enough with 7s and 8s will
like
keep you up in the top rankings.
We said before 7 and 8 is a great score, especially in this 1 meter event. So now we see the standings. In first, Alexa Fung from Canada, 5 points behind Juliana, Germany, and only 2 points behind her, Molly from USA, and practically tied Presley from Canada. So really not a big spread between the scores right now. Still 2 more rounds. Again, we're going to see a lot of the same dives, keeping things exciting.
Second to 6th place, only 5 points separating. First place, only 10 points ahead of 6th. These events, when you don't have quite as many dives, only 3 optionals, all tend to have divers bunched up a little bit. Vanessa Reynes now with a forward 2.5 pike. This is sort of a harder dive for her. She kind of just barely was making it in practice. We'll see if in the competition she steps up and gets a little bit of a higher takeoff. A better takeoff, but then lost control of it on the entry.
It really is a very technical dive, especially when you're younger. These girls are very powerful, but they still have a lot of muscle to grow. They need to work with the board a bit better. And when you're competing this dive at such a young age, you're really focused on the somersault, and you also should be very focused on the height you're getting, because the two together make a really nice forward 2.5. I remember always trying to focus on the spin. You just want to make it on your head. And that's why we're seeing these forward 2.5 pikes just a little bit lower than we've seen in the men's and even the women's A1 meter event.
And Georgia is just going to follow her up. She did a slightly better inward 1.5 than Vanessa. Now she has a chance to show a higher jump, a straighter up takeoff, and hopefully a more vertical entry. Also over-rotates a little bit less over-rotation, a little more vertical in the jump. She's a quick dynamic diver, Georgia. Very nice.
And something we see a lot on this dive, and we can see it from where we're sitting, is that they're really worried they're not going to make it. So instead of grabbing their hands on the bottom, they stick them out like a Superman, just trying to make sure their hands hit the water before their head, trying to make minimal splash, but they're going to get their best rip entry when they are grabbing their hands.
Yeah, just like all our uneducated friends always ask us, how do you go in the water? Just put your hands out like a swimmer start? And actually, no, not like that. You actually have to grab your hands. A bit counterintuitive. You want to have a larger surface area as you hit the water so you can open up a hole for yourself and make that special rip sound as your hands you're palming the water as you go in.
And also very important to note, it does really hurt your head if you're not protecting that water entry with your hands, but we do see it more often on 1 meter where they might not grab their hands because it is definitely less painful.
Genesis with her second dive, a lower degree of difficulty, just a simple twisting dive, back 1.5 with a half twist. Well done, good choice. I like to see it when divers are doing dives they're confident in, regardless of the degree of difficulty. She puts on a nice little entry here. Also, like Courtney just mentioning, not quite getting your hands perfectly. You can get away with that a little bit more on 1 meter, as the water is not as, you're not having quite the same impact. The larger the impact, the more important it is to grab your hands tightly and have your elbows locked out, elbows straight, your body in that perfect line, following the hole you opened up with your hands. Isabel had a good start with the inward. Now goes to forward 2.5 pike. Well, we haven't seen a great front 2.5 pike yet. We've seen a few now in the first round. So far, everyone has rolled them just a little bit over. Sometimes when you don't feel like you're going to make it, or often if it's a little bit slow, you hang on just that little bit extra, and then suddenly you've overcompensated. By the time you come out, it's too late, and there's nothing you can do.
And we have to remember their B age group, we've seen it a lot in the A age group where they're making those mini corrections, whether it means to hold on a bit longer, kick out a bit earlier, stand up a bit taller in their hurdle, and they've learned that over time. So we might not see that as much from the younger group, but it's definitely impressive when they do learn to do that.
And following that front 2.5, another front 2.5, Yelena, this is the forward 2.5 round, it appears. And the first one that didn't over-rotate. Now, interesting from our angle, we can see clearly she's actually throwing her arms a little bit to the side. When you're spinning forwards, you want to really have your arms go clearly narrow. And she does throw forward, but you can see her go almost sideways around to grab her leg. So it's maybe good for grabbing a pike position, but not that great for getting rotation. Want to go in the direction that you're spinning, not out to the sides.
Now we have hometown Canadian Presley Deck with a forward 2.5 somersault, but this time in the tuck position. We haven't seen any of these quite yet.
Yeah, slightly lower degree of difficulty. But if you can't make the pike, of course you want to go for tuck, and only 0.2 less. A good one here will gain ground, since all the others, we haven't seen a good front 2.5 pike yet. So opportunity for Presley. And she opens the door of that opportunity and steps right in. Beautiful tuck position, finds vertical, decides she's not quite going to grab her hands yet, but gets her hands out quickly for the water. Straight entry, is rewarded with some good scores there, and a point total that brings her up to second place for the time being. Gabriela. Standing backwards, she'll rotate back for a back 1.5 pike, sitting in 8th place. So she's going to do a 2.3 right here. Her last dive will be inward, saving her best for last. But a strong back 1.5 pike. Again, these are a little bit harder to control, the verticalness of this, especially if you move backwards. She does a good job of controlling it. So just a little bit over. Not quite lining her hands up, getting that flat hand just in the right spot on the water, that precision that we've seen from some of the divers bringing up 7s and 8s. But a steady 44-point total, and she's sneaking up into the mix. And we know she's got a strong dive left at the end that'll push for close to 50 points. Signe confident on back and reverses. She started with the back 1.5. Now she does reverse 1.5.
She worked very hard to save that.
Oh, yes. Just in the corner of the board, inducing a bit of panic. Probably not just from her, but all the coaches watching. Beautiful pike position. She has really nice positions in the air. Look at that.
It's really
Unfortunate.
hard to get that rotation when you're leaning forward off the board.
Yeah. A little bit of disappointment on their faces. Consolation. One more dive left. She'll also finish with an inward 1.5 pike. Some of the divers started with that dive, which is generally in this event going to be one of your strongest dives and safest dives. And we have a handful of the divers that will be finishing with their inward 1.5. Lucy Davison, sitting in ninth, the same dive. Much more powerful in the takeoff. She's right on the tip of the board as she's going. A little bit out of control, coming out a little bit late. And so she'll over-rotate. That uncomfortable feeling as you come out, knowing you're going over, praying you can stop it.
You do always think you can stop it, and it's as you're hitting the water, you realize it was not possible.
Yeah, sometimes you're underwater just hoping, it felt really over, but maybe it wasn't. And then you come up to hear the scores. Nope, my feelings were accurate after all.
Maybe they didn't see it.
Yeah, and they always do. You might trick one judge, but that's why we have 7. 7 judges where we take away the top 2 and bottom 2 scores. You're left with 3 in the middle. And that's where you get the total of those judges' scores. Multiply that by the degree of difficulty.
Paige, an inward 1.5 pike on her second round. Really, really nice. A very beautiful rip entry, just needing to come out a little bit more in that straight position. It's really not noticeable until we watch it in slow motion. A really nice second dive from Paige.
Yeah, and Paige, in the slow motion, I'll notice a little bit, she did a little bit what Vanessa did on her forward, or no, it wasn't Vanessa, I think it was Yelena. Just arms a little bit sideways in the takeoff. So you sacrifice a bit of height and distance. You'll want to throw narrow, forwards and inwards. Move your hands narrow into those positions. Alexa now, forward 2.5 pike. Alexa. Leading after the first round, does a very good front 2.5 pike. Maybe not quite fully extended for the great marks, but at 2.6, she'll stay up there. Just you could see, this is where she probably felt like she was going over. You can see as soon as she's hitting the water, she's bending underneath the water to hold her legs back, give that illusion of verticality. She does a great job of that. It brings the water down with her, doesn't make a big splash, even though that's one where she probably felt like she went way over. But just with that masterful pike save, holds it in, still gets good scores, and is hanging on to her lead, depending on what Molly can do with her same front 2.5. So with a higher DD, you have potential for great scores. And she does a good one, especially considering her feet were a little back from the edge of the board. Stays calm.
Got into a really, really tight pike, which the judges always want to see. Your face into your knees, tight knees and toes, which is what we just saw from Molly.
Alexa with 50 points on her 2.5, Molly 48. So Alexa pulls a little more ahead. She is now 10 points ahead of second place. Third goes to Georgia from Italy. And the other Canadian, Presley, sitting in fourth currently. Now the spread is still only 11 points from second place all the way down to fifth. And now everything depends on this last dive.
Now becoming a more stressful round for the girls, an exciting round for everybody else.
I think it's exciting if you've got an inward 1.5 pike left. That's a nice, comfortable finish. You can almost count on it, and there are a few divers here with back rotating dives. So the first two divers will do back 1.5s, then we'll see a few inward 1.5s, and then the highest degree of difficulty dive coming at the end, the most complicated dive. Don't see many girls in the B event doing reverse twisters, but Molly's got reverse 1.5, 1.5 coming up at the very end. High degree of difficulty. She can gain ground with that. Paige's got a forward 2.5 pike. But first, let's focus on Vanessa with her back 1.5 pike. Vanessa Rennes sitting in 8th. Really out of the medal hunt at this moment, but wanting to finish strong. Well, she used her strength. Unfortunately, she went back a little too far and over-rotated her back 1.5 pike. A low of 4.5 from the judges, high of 5.5. Lowest degree of difficulty here, 2 in her list with 2.3. Consolation expression on the coach's face. I think they can take pride in making the final. Very good start. Better than the prelim. And now Georgia De Sanctis fighting for a medal. She's currently in 3rd place coming into this final dive. And she's doing a back 1.5 pike. A little lower degree of difficulty. Probably the least stable of dives in the list. She did a beautiful inward 1.5, a solid front 2.5.
And a very nice back 1.5.
A back 1.5. Not as nice a pike position as the others, but she's all smiles.
Very happy. Really quick in and out of that pike.
Very vertical. And she pulls 7s. 48 points on a back 1.5 to finish. You can see why she left it for last. Big celebration from her coach. They know that is a medal performance for her, unless something extraordinary happens from the divers in 4th and 5th, which they are obviously hoping to surpass that score.
And we have a very neat feature on our screen up here, which actually tells us how many points they'll need to slip into certain positions, which we really enjoy using on the final round.
And Genesis from Mexico, inward 1.5 pike. She had a low DD dive in the last round, goes back up to a 2.4, and a comfortable inward 1.5.
She's very good at entering the water with minimal splash.
Solid entries. We need her to jump a little higher, spin a little faster, to give that impression that the dive was easy. That looked a little bit forced from Genesis. That won't move her up much. Genesis was in 10th, moves to 2nd for the time being with 295. Georgia is 22 points ahead in 3rd. 3rd from the last round, sitting in 1st right now. And now Isabel comes from 11th place in the last round with her inner 1.5 pike. One of her stronger dives. We've seen some beautiful ones in practice.
Beautiful. That's the highest inward 1.5 pike we've seen in this event.
Yeah, really just beautiful patience on the board. This is actually one of the more advanced skills, is just waiting on an inward or waiting on a dive where the spring of the board goes down for a long time, and if you wait just right, keep your body firm so that you can transfer that energy from the board into your body, into the height and the rotation at the same time. We see a lot of divers transfer it just into rotation or just into height, but that Isabel shows that combination of height and rotation. And then, of course, the control and beautiful entry at the finish to have a great finishing dive with highs of 8.5s on that inward 1.5, 55 points.
Very beautiful.
That moves her up all the way to second for the time being. Julina with her back 1.5 pike. And one German goes over, the other a little bit short, under-rotated. It's good balance, but only 5.5s, high of a 6.5 for Julina. That is not enough to move her up into medal contention. She was 8th coming into that. In fact, that will drop her in the standings as some of the divers with their inward 1.5s moved ahead of her. Presley on the same dive, coming off a great forward 2.5. Fourth place coming into this round. A little bit lower degree of difficulty, but a confident kick and come out on this will give her a chance. She needs 50.3 points to overtake Georgia, who's in first. That is a big ask on a back 1.5. But she's given it her all. That is going to be close. She's going to be right around that 48 to 50 point mark on this dive. Vertical takeoff. The judges hopefully didn't notice that her feet weren't as pointed as they could have been all the way throughout that dive.
There's just a slight foot flatten in the middle there. The best thing ever is when you hit the water and you can hear your whole team cheering for you even when you're still under the water.
Yeah, so they didn't like that flex foot. I think the rest was great. 6.5s, solid score on that back 1.5. But with that entry and that takeoff, she had potential for even more. She's sitting in second right now, but she's behind Georgia, who was third in the last round. Unlikely she'll move or hang on to that medal spot. But great performance nonetheless. That's 3 great dives for Presley in the final. Much better than the prelim. That finishes her performance here at the World Junior Championships. What a great way to finish. Just such a fast spin from Gabriela. Just a little bit nervous. She seems to be cutting off her takeoffs. And by cutting off, I mean just not, we talked about you want to transfer the energy into your height and rotation. She's just doing the rotation, not getting much height. Probably finishing a little lower than she was used to.
Just learning to work with the pressure, the stress of competing.
Still a good dive. Probably had expectations of a medal coming into this event.
Mm-hmm.
She will leave a little bit disappointed, but made finals 1 meter and 3 meter. Strong performances, bright future for Gabriela. Signe, back, reverse, and now the inward 1.5 to finish off. A little bit faltered in the last round. Finish, again, a little bit slow, considering this is inward 1.5, which should be a very solid dive for everyone in this event. She finishes beautifully, but this is a slow takeoff. Nice pike.
Really feeling the need to squeeze in this dive just to make it around. Getting 7.5, not too bad, especially a nice way when that's your last dive of the event.
Yeah, solid scores, 49 points. I think with a slightly better takeoff, she's capable of 8s on that dive. A lot of beautiful things in her diving. And now, Lucy. Inward 1.5 pike. Now Lucy masters this use of the springboard where she waits for the board and transfers it into height and rotation at the same time, finishing very high. And then unfortunately, controlling the entry a little too much and stopping it from going over.
The position of your arms, your legs, your tummy, even your toes can really change how you enter the water. Still receiving really high scores on this last dive.
Yeah, great dive. Might be deceptive from our angle. It looked like she pike saved from here and held it short.
Tying with Presley Deck with a score of 311.8.
Ties are rare.
Very rare.
They're currently in second place, 311.80, 6 points behind Georgia, who's holding the lead, but we still have Molly and Alexa to come. And now Paige with her front 2.5 pike.
Very
Wow,
nice.
that's very impressive. Very high jump. Nice spin. She's got the legs and toes of this event, I would say. Look at that extension in her knees and ankles. Beautiful positions. Nice tight pike position. And Paige with 309 just behind, just out of the medals right now. And now, Alexa, who's been leading this entire event. Back 1.5 pike. Concentration on her face as she's going to focus to have one more great dive.
Alexa,
Outstanding.
the most
That'll be
consistent
good
diver
enough.
of this event.
And what a consolation, a medal for her. Presley and Alexa tying in the Canadian trials for the 3-meter event. I know and then since we're only allowed to enter 2 for that event, they had to actually have a dive off here. Alexa not making it to be able to dive in the 3-meter, but will finish up with a medal. Big hugs from her sister Caitlin, also a medalist at this Junior Worlds. Probably the most successful diving family at this Junior Worlds.
And
A
last
medal
up
for each sister.
is Molly finishing off the event with the most difficult dive, the reverse 1.5 somersault, 1.5 twists, needing 39.9 to knock Presley and Lucy out of that 3rd place.
Yes, but I think she's got her eyes on Alexa, so she needs 61 to get that. That's going to require 8.5 nines. That's a tall ask. Judging has been a bit tight at this event, but a good reverse twist will guarantee her 2nd place.
And a really great dive.
I think
from
that's second
Molly.
easily. 2.6. She only needed 45 points. She's done it. 6.5 sevens from the judges.
Very impressive work.
Well done. Hard dive, done well. Well-deserved medal for Molly. Our final results will be on the board. Congratulations go around. Canada with another gold medal in Alexa Fung's performance. 10 points behind from the US, Molly Gray. Italy, another medal for Italy. Georgia De Sanctis with the medal in 3rd place. Congratulations all around. Very nice to see Presley just out of the medals at 4th, tied with Lucy Dobison. Strong performances from those divers. As we conclude the Girls B event at the Junior World Championships. There it is on the board. You see the standings. 2 Canadians, 2 Australians in the top 6. 3 different countries in the medals.
And we'll be back up next with the boys B platform final. Igor, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Courtney, once again. Hope everyone enjoys and comes back for some more exciting diving.
For your viewing pleasure, coming up will be a highlight package of our girls B 1 meter championship final. Here you go. Here's your finals.